Welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, this is Bottomline Africa. Let us now shift focus to the big continental discussion on bridging the gender gap in crucial decision-making positions. To do that, it's important to look at Rwanda's example, which is placed sixth on the list of the most gender-conscious nations in the world. Our Kigali-based correspondent Eugene Anangwe recently engaged two gender activists on Rwanda's gender model. Here is part of that discussion, first aired in our partner station, Rwanda TV.
Do we still need the affirmative action, or Rwandan women have now reached, for lack of a better word, Olive?
Yes, we still do, for a number of reasons. One, although we have achieved more than 50% in parliament, look at the local levels. There was a research that was done by civil society last year in terms of why we still have low numbers in certain positions and why women are actually not occupying these positions. And so some of the things that they revealed was that actually women still don't have the required fabric in terms of support from the family, from the communities to feel they can run for these positions.
When it comes to law and policy, we can sit down and change it in a day. But when it comes to changing cultural practices, you can't do it in a day. It's a process.
First of all, coming just back on the question of the relevance today of affirmative action, I will, without hesitation, say we still need, but we have a deeper question we have to ask ourselves. By addressing the normative issue of correcting injustice, women have suffered forever. Are we trying also to shift society to have a minority of men somewhere? What are we after? Because it may, if we continue discussing numbers the way we are doing it, we risk to have it as an end on itself.
When it's not.
There is a real question of correcting injustice, but we should not create injustice. And also, what do we want afterwards? We want improvement in our society.
Well, it's important to note that Rwanda holds about 64%. I mean, women in Rwanda hold about 64% of seats in the lower house. I believe it is leading in the world. So let's take a look at regional gender numbers, and we're going to get those figures shortly on our screens. And we begin with the South African Parliament, which has a 44% representation of women. And then there's Rwanda, as I already mentioned, has the highest female representation in the world at 64% of its MPs are women. And then 34% of women are MPs in Uganda. Okay. And that's it. And let's look at the female presidents in Africa at the moment. And we have the likes of Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, who is the president of Liberia. She served since the year 2006. And then there's the Amina Gurib Fakim, who is President, Mauritius president since the year 2015. And then Joyce Hilda Banda, who served from 2012 to 2014 as Malawi's president. And then Catherine Samba Panza, who is the acting head of state of the Central African Republic. She served since the year 2014. Then Agnes Hossan Balepeo, who served from the year 2012 to 2015 as the acting president of Mauritius. And there's Ross Rogombe, who served since October 2009 as the interim president there. And then Ivi Masepe Kasaburi, who served from the year 2005 and 2008 as acting president of South Africa. And last but not the least, Sylvia Kinigi, who served from the year 1993 to 1994 as acting president of Burundi. So let's go straight to a studio discussion tonight, and we have our guest composed of Terry Omondi, who's the FIDA Kenya CEO, Mike Washira is the Deputy Director of the Center for Rights Education and Awareness Crew, and as well as Tia Gilgalo, who is the immediate woman representative of Isiolo. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me begin with you, Tia. You have been very vocal about this topic in the 11th Parliament. And let's begin with the two-thirds gender rule, which still hangs over Parliament. And I believe the legislatures there failed to pass this bill for a record 3 times. What went wrong? And do you believe this time around the 12th Parliament is going to get its acts together?
Thank you. I think this time Kenyan 12th Parliament have no option. They'll have to really enact this law because in terms of what happened in 11th Parliament was that most people think that the women represented do not really work towards this. But we did put a lot of effort in ensuring that this bill goes through. We even adapted members of Parliament, took them out for dinner.
Yes. It never worked.
It never worked. And one reason why it did not work was that most of them, especially the female members of Parliament, thought that we are flower girls, that we are bonga points, that we are there just to fill seats. And they think that most of the time we don't contribute to the debate in Parliament. And they think that we are going to take a lot of taxpayers' money and heavy burden on Kenyans. Because women are going to be in Parliament.
And this is where I want to bring Terry in. And Terry, if you look at the statistics there, the country that we do focus on is Kenya, because we're performing really dismally compared to other East African countries. The country still stands at 21% as far as the women representation is concerned, despite the just concluded election, which a lot of women, came into Parliament. So what does this say about Kenya? Is there more that still needs to be done?
Yes, I think for Kenya we still have a lot to do with political will first, because we have good bills that have been placed before Parliament that give a methodology of how to achieve the two-third gender principle, but we just didn't have parliamentarians to pass it. They just were not in Parliament to pass the bill. So I think we still have a lot to do with the political will, so that women are able to achieve at least 1/3 of the current Parliament.
And I understand in the last Parliament, Terry, there are, of course, 47 women representatives. There are those who have been nominated, those who have been elected. As much as the number was less, apparently there are those who missed out when this bill was supposed to be passed.
Yes, we had the same feedback that there were women who are not in Parliament. But I think it's not only about women voting for a bill in Parliament. This is a bill for the society. We are calling upon a fair representation of the society. So both male and female members of Parliament needed to be in Parliament on that day when the bill came for discussion and passing in Parliament. So I think the same way there were male members of Parliament who are absent, and there were also a few women members of Parliament who are absent, that shouldn't really be the issue, but we should look at it just like any other bill in the Parliament.
Exactly. Of course, there are some male members of Parliament who are engaged in blame game last time, I remember. Now, Mike, do you think the 12th Parliament will be any different compared to the last Parliament?
I think, Yusuf, there is the hope that it will be a different Parliament. One, because it comes into operation with this issue of the two-thirds hanging over its head from the 11th Parliament. So I think it's incumbent on this 12th Parliament to show us that they have the political will to be able to pass this bill, and to ensure that then we have the legislation that ensures that the principle of two-thirds is fully met. And I think you've had political rhetoric in the past few days where they have said that this is one of the things that they have prioritized. So we sincerely hope that this time around they're actually going to stick to their word. We have cases that are in court, and I don't want to speak too much about those, but there are other processes which are going on to ensure that we persuade them to take this issue seriously, because as it is right now, with the way the Parliament is constituted, with not having met the two-thirds threshold, I think you can already begin to see the complications that could emerge, because anybody then could challenge any of the decisions that they make as a Parliament, saying that if they have not yet met the two-thirds threshold, then they are not properly constituted, and then any business that they transact is void ab initio.
Now, Tia, reports indicate, that we're getting that women continue to face hostilities, especially during campaigns. There are those who have been, calling some of these women who have been trying to get into these other positions as greedy, telling them to just contest for the woman representative positions. How was your personal experience during campaigns? And perhaps could you bring on board, the experiences some of your colleagues have been talking to you about?
I think for women representative, it was not as hostile as it is for constituency members of parliament. For women representative, of course, you know that this is a position that was an affirmative action position. It was basically a bridging mechanism to ensure that at least there's gender inclusivity. And there was no much really a threat from especially the men who at first were really targeting the women because they think that they are competitors. They know that they are taking their position, so it was a really stiff competition. Quite a number of them, I've been told and I've been following up, have had quite very nasty experiences with the men where they were looking for goons to beat them up and push them away so that at least they can give up and leave. But I'm happy that quite a number of ladies, especially from the pastoralist communities, like Sarah Corelle, like Lesuda, and many others like Safia Abdi, who are from a patriarchal community who believe that women cannot take a leadership position, fought it out, and I'm happy that they are in parliament. And I believe that is setting a stage, especially for the conservative communities, that women leadership is actually
some more women
actualized.
to eye these seats in pastoral areas. Now, Terry, if you look at the statistics from just the East African region, it's very interesting. Rwanda stands at about 64% as far as women representation is concerned. Uganda, I believe, at 33%. Kenya is still down there. It was at 19.5, now at 20%. What is Kenya not doing right?
I think it goes back to what we started by saying, and also my colleagues have alluded to it, that it's just the political will. I mean, Kenya in East Africa leads in so many things, and we are proud as a leading country in East Africa. And I think it should be the same thing, even when it comes to women representation. But I think it's just the bit that we have refused to prioritize, that the gender rule is important, and the issue of women representation is also a human right, like any other rights. So I think just the same way we are leading in various issues, economic-wise, leading even in our industries, in our laws, legislations, and policies, we can also lead when it comes to women representation in parliament.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully. And Terry, I'm still with you. And if you look at another statistics here, women make up about 52% of Kenya's population, and 60% of registered voters in Kenya are women. So what explains lack of women leadership in this country?
I think there are various issues that affect elections, and there are various issues also that affect women's decision. Ultimately, we have done researches, and we found out that some of the women voters, either they are coerced to vote for a certain candidate, or even just from their socialization, they have been brought up thinking that it's not the place for a woman to be a leader. And it's from this cultural backward thinking or the patriarchal nature of our society that we say we need affirmative action to make sure that if there are any women there who probably still do not believe in women as their leaders, we need to change that perception and have women in the leadership positions. And I'm glad that this is changing. Like we've already stated, in the last election, we only had 16 elected. This time we have 23 elected. And I'm sure as we go on championing for this affirmative action, presenting more women who are leaders, will change that cultural perspective and will make women believe in women, but also men in the society believe in the women leadership.
I'm going to look at the statistics on how women really performed in the just concluded general election on August 8th. Now, Michael posed that question that I'd asked Terry earlier about, how Kenya is performing as far as, comparing it with the rest of the East African region. Terry is hopeful that Kenya is going to catch up, but what do you think needs to be done to make sure that Kenya gets to, let's say, the level of Rwanda, for instance?
That's a very interesting question, because I'll take you back to what former President Obama said when he was here, and this issue came up when he was addressing the nation. And he put it so well where he said that if we do not recognize that this is an issue of equity, it is an issue of inclusivity, it is an issue of rule of law as well, it is akin to a team going to play without half of its players. You talk about women being more than 50% in this country. There is no way we can start talking about sustainable development. There's no way we can start talking about democracy if that number of or that population continues to be excluded from decision making. So I think one is for us to realize that this is not a competition between men and women. If we are really talking about sustainable development and pushing this country forward in the way that it needs to go, we have to bring everybody on board. And this is what the Constitution recognizes, even in Article 27, when you talk about equality and freedom from discrimination, where the Constitution itself recognizes that there are certain structural, cultural, and legislative barriers that limit women's participation in decision-making. And not just women, other marginalized groups as well. And that is why affirmative action then is such a key process in ensuring that these barriers are removed so that we bring everybody on board and ensure then that we move together as one nation.
Yes. Yeah. Now, Tia, if you look at the statistics from the just concluded election on August 8th, it's very interesting. Women leaders, 23 of them have been elected, up from 16 in 2013. This is as far as the National Assembly as well as the Senate is concerned, plus the 47 position, which of course is just for women in Parliament. And then there's another number, half of the 12 nominees are by political parties. This will take the number of women in Parliament this time round to 76. Do you think the just concluded election was very much kind, or the Kenyan electorate were kind to women this time around?
I think quite a lot of civic education have been done. Civil society have been out there to educate the communities, and I want to thank them and congratulate them. I would also say that Jubilee Party did very well. Quite a number of women who are elected are from Jubilee Party, and I think the support and moral support and maybe financial support given to the women was outstanding, and I would want to thank the Jubilee leadership that most of the women, especially from the hard-to-reach areas like northern Kenya, have made it in Parliament. Of course, the number, we've fallen short of the threshold required by the Constitution, and that shows that, for example, in Senate, we still need 2 more. In National Assembly, we need about 41 women. And in county assemblies, I think about 385. And that also shows that we still have a lot of work to do. But I think if, for example, the right of women is given to them by the 12th Parliament, passing the bill and ensuring that at least we have a number of women that is required to make our assemblies constitutional, then I think that would be very well done.
Tia has talked about, women being elected from pastoralist areas. These are people who have very strong cultural beliefs. Do you get a feeling that there are part of the electorate who have put aside their cultural beliefs and they're electing women based on issues?
I would say, like, you're very proud of the Samburus electing Lesuda, because I think then we will stop having so much of the excuse of patriarchal society, because even the ones that we thought were the most difficult ones have now voted for a woman, actually elected a woman. And we all know that Lesuda first was nominated on an affirmative action, and now she is elected. So I would call upon various communities also to follow this, and it's a good example that even other communities can follow. And I think at the end of the day, such kind of women are able to prove themselves and they're able to deliver. So for all communities, women can deliver for them.
I think that will serve as your final comment. Mike, very quickly, Salif Johnson is heading to yet another election. I don't know if she's going to contest and defend her seat in Liberia, but she's one of the few, maybe the only woman president in Africa. Do you think there's a possibility that we're going to get another woman president in this continent?
I think there's a possibility we might even get the next woman president from Kenya. But I'm very hopeful in terms of even Kenya's disposition that we will begin to see more women go into decision-making spaces. I think we need to dispel the myth that affirmative action is about tokenism. It's not about tokenism. It's about addressing historical imbalances which then have limited women's participation in decision-making. And I think that once we are able to overcome that and get the right women for the right jobs, then we will then begin to talk about moving this country forward in a very progressive way.
Many thanks, Mike Washira, for your input. Mike is the Deputy Director of Center for Right Education and Awareness Crew, as well as Terry Omondi, who's the FIDA Kenya CEO, and Tia Galgalo, who is the former woman representative from Isiolo. Many thanks, all of you, for your input. Now, it's about time we cross over to our images of the day, which come from the volatile Libya. Now, in the midst of political turmoil in Libya, Ahmed Al-Maghi is dedicated to preserving his country's rich heritage. For 23 years, Al-Maghi has been amassing an impressive collection of antiques and has opened a shop in the city of Misrata to exhibit his finds. He has collected over 4,500 pieces that date back to the Ottoman Empire, the Italian colonial period, and throughout the rule of Libya's last king, Idris. But despite opening a shop for now, Al-Maghi only wants to showcase his collection to as many people as he can. The collection includes vintage cameras, plots that belong to Libya's King Idris, Ottoman maps from 1902, and even an MG sports car dating back to the World War II period. Well, it's about time we look at our day's proverb today. Over to a Twitter poll tonight, where we did ask you if you do believe that African governments have the goodwill to bridge the gender gap in leadership. 72% of you said yes, and 28% of you said no. Let me just take a look at some of your feedback here. And, okay, I'm going to go through some of them before this program ends. Well, over to our bottom line tonight, and Africans are slowly beginning to realize that women play a significant role in social and economic development. In fact, 2015 was the year of women's empowerment and development towards Africa's Agenda 2063. Now, it is no longer an affirmative action issue. It is the right thing to do. Now, investing in women is a smart thing to do. Women are at the heart of development. They till the land, raise the children, go to work, feed their families, and manage household finances. All these are specific aspects of economic growth: agriculture, education, nutrition, health, finance, and economics. It therefore just makes sense to have women in leadership roles across different strata in society. But what are the returns on investment? While no country has been able to achieve full equality, the Nordic countries provide a good template for benchmarking. These countries have more women in the workplace, and this means more shared participation in childcare, more equitable distribution of labor at home, better work-life balance for both women and men, and in some cases a boost to waning fertility rates. Now, the opportunity cost of having children has reduced and led to relatively higher and rising birth rates, higher labor activity, and a more robust economy. Now, 3 of the Nordic countries have been named the most prosperous in the world. They include Denmark, Sweden, as well as Norway. Let's get more specific. In Norway, since 2008, publicly listed companies have been required to have 40% of each sex on their boards. It has an early retirement age, has prospered outside the European Union that has buckled under economic recession. But most importantly, this country has been named the most prosperous country for the 7th year running. What a better example. Now, this is the bottom line tonight. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Of course, you've been watching Bottomline Africa. Remember, this program is aired every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 11 p.m. Until Monday next week. See you then. Bye-bye and enjoy the rest of your night.